just chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to welcome everyone back to the Learning Clinic on CKLU 96.7 FM. I am your host, Bob Kirwan. And this afternoon, we are talking education. We're taking a break for a week from our Meet the Candidates shows. And in the studio today, I have Ryan Cooney, who's Executive Director of the Canadian Youth Golf Alliance. A lot of people are going to recognize Ryan. Ryan, you spent a lot of time on the golf courses in the Sudbury area.
I did indeed. Lively Golf Course was my first home. My second home was Coppercliff, but my first home from probably the age of 14 till early 20s was Lively Golf Course, absolutely.
Yeah, I grew up on a house that was right on, I think it's the ninth fairway, the ninth hole. It was, I can remember when Lively was just a bush area, and I was there when they actually started it. Wayne my brother was a CPGA pro there, and built the 6th Avenue course, and has been involved with golf. So yeah, you've got a golf background, and people will recognize Ryan Cooney. And now it's interesting that you now have, it's a not-for-profit or a charity?
It's a not-for-profit.
Okay.
And the reason, I'll just tell you the reason it's a not-for-profit and a charity is because we have youth in unemployment programs that work for us.
Okay.
And the way the charity laws work is you can't be an employee of a charity and benefit from it at the same time. So the youth who are involved in the employment program wouldn't be able to benefit from the education or the golf programs legally.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's not much difference between it.
No, absolutely no difference.
You're still accessing funds and grants and
Yeah.
what have you.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the Canadian Youth Golf Alliance, because it's not that old. It's fairly recent.
Yeah, it's 3 years, but 2 years working at it, full time.
Okay.
So the way that it started is obviously golf. It's in our name. We're more than just golf, but we definitely are. Two of our programs are based in golf. So the employment program, we get youth working at golf courses all over Ontario. In Sudbury here, what we do is we have them working at Cedar Green, Timberwolf, Monte Vista, which is the old course in the valley.
Right.
At the Idlewild and at Lively, and actually at Pine Grove and Stone Hill this year. So we basically have all the golf courses covered for our youth working there. And then we obviously have golf programs, different golf programs, but we needed a way to access the youth. And hence the School of Philosophy started to develop when we were going into high schools. We recognized that one of the things that was missing in school, being someone who actually graduated from Laurentian with a master's in humanities, I noticed that there was a lack of that in school, so we're filling a gap, if you will, in the system and going in there to teach philosophy of life.
That's a big curriculum.
It is, absolutely it is.
Yeah, I mean, zero in on that, just a little bit.
So our School of Philosophy, one of my mentors and good friends for a long time, Anna Barsanti.
Know Anna quite well.
Yeah, so Anna and I were chatting when we first began developing the programs, and one of the things that she said was, you need to have constant contact with the youth, for the youth to trust you and to develop strong programs where they're not disconnected for 2 months or 6 months or whatever.
Right.
So when I started to go into try and figure out what we were gonna do every week with the youth, it's not every week in Sudbury, but it is in Toronto where I live. Here I'm traveling up here, so it's every 2 or 3 weeks up here. But anyway, the things that we were generally talking about were things that matter to them where risk is involved. So problems with relationships, addiction, education, You know, just life, right? Just issues of life, and looking at them philosophically, and trying to get them to engage in what I felt was missing in school, which is when I did my master's here, we sat around just like you and I are now, Bob, and having a conversation. And in school, it seems like the conversation is a one-way conversation.
Right.
That's just the way the system is. That's nobody's fault. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not blaming the system. It's
Yeah.
just.
You got a master's through the system and you.
It is what it is, right, as they say. So we changed it around and we created a seminar-style classroom. And what I found was when I'm sitting at the same level of the students are much more prone to engage in the conversations and see me as a peer rather than a teacher, which I'm not. You know,
Well,
I would like to
you're
consider
not-
myself an educator.
Yes, you're.
Yeah, but a teacher in the classical sense, I'd probably get kicked out of the schools I'm in.
Well, yeah, we could have a long philosophical discussion as to
Yeah,
what is a teacher, and I say, you show me any parent and try to tell me that they're not teachers.
yeah,
You show me anybody who somebody can see doing things and they are teaching.
yeah,
You know.
teaching something, and you're exactly right. What I try to do with the students in our classes is throw the teacher hat onto them,
Yeah.
so that if I'm not there, these conversations can still happen, whether it be at the CAF table or anywhere else,
Yeah.
you know. So that's really our agenda, is to create life learners.
Yeah. Now, I've spent my entire career as a teacher, as a certified teacher, and the things that you're talking about are things that I think attract a lot of young people to the profession. Being able to talk and being able to help individuals and being able to help them with their philosophy of life as they're getting the curriculum and developing the skills. And you're right, you've got a master's in humanities, and when you take a look at what's happening in our system today, and probably even when we were growing up, there's a lot of things that are getting in the way of life and getting in the way of learning. And people tend to cope and get through the system somehow, but they don't resolve the problems. And I know that most people who finally get through the system, if they're gonna be honest, they will say that there were a lot of barriers and challenges that they had to, and nobody can walk out,
Absolutely.
I shouldn't say nobody, very few people can walk out and say they didn't have their moments when they look back and think, you know, I'm not all that proud of those particular moments.
Right.
And so I
Even the
think.
good students.
Yeah, oh yeah, even the
Yeah,
good students.
yeah.
Because that's growing up.
Yeah.
So are you finding when you're talking to these, and they're small groups, right, that you're dealing with?
Yeah, there's typically between 8 and 15.
So it's a good support group for conversation.
Absolutely.
Are they all
Yeah.
the same ages, or are they?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's from the same class, same grade level?
yeah. Here in Sudbury, it's different at every school. We have a different partnership at every school, but some schools, what they'll do is they'll handpick some students,
Okay,
and then other schools will give me a whole class, so I'll work with them. The idea is to work with the same students from September to June,
okay.
right? So that's kind of the idea.
And really, nothing that you're doing with these selected groups, these selected students, is anything that what we would call a normal student couldn't use either.
Well, no, I think that as I was going through high school, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I had problems with addiction, and I had problems with skipping, and I had problems with the system. I fought the system, I fought the authority of the system, not particular people. And when I started to study philosophy in university, I found a way of studying, not a discipline or not a topic, or I'm not talking about Plato or Aristotle or anything like that. I'm talking about, you know, just a way of, just like science or math, it's just a way of studying. And I was always someone who was philosophical but didn't know it and wasn't able to nurture it. And so in today's class, we had a straight A student who is in grade 12, and she said today that this was, I'm not gonna toot my own horn, well, maybe I will. She said this was her favorite class because what we do is we find meaning in things like a poem where instead of trying to interpret it with certain rules and guidelines that they have to interpret it with, and usually, according to her at least, she was never felt like it was her interpretation ever, and she didn't remember studying the poems. Whereas today we brought in, a couple of poems, and I fooled them, and they were really songs, which is poetry in and of itself, and she was able to just look at the poem as if it was written for her.
Yeah.
And that's what, as you know, being an educator, that's what text is all about. It's about us taking ownership of it,
Yeah.
and having a dialogue with the author or
Yeah.
with whoever else we want, and that's,
Everybody writes something for their reader.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
Margaret Atwood said it perfectly, right? Like she has a great poem called My Dear Reader, right? And she's not writing it for her, she's writing it for you, and she also gives you the freedom to interpret it however you want.
There's
And
no wrong interpretation.
there's no wrong interpretation as long as you're doing it seriously,
Yeah.
right? And these classes are not, we're not going into the classrooms and talking about what you did on the weekend. We're talking about how things impacted you over the weekend. Whether you got in a fight with your friend or someone defriended you on Facebook, all of those things mean something.
Yeah.
And at the end of the discussion, if you can pull some meaning out of that, maybe you'll find out that it actually means nothing. But if you don't go through the philosophical process and the dialogue, how are we ever supposed to figure out what education even means? Like, why are they studying? Is it, is it the case that if they memorize everything, spew it back out onto a paper,
Yeah.
that they are star students? Well, the answer for them is right now, yes. And that is what you're talking about for everyone,
Yeah.
is philosophy for everyone. Well, if they can figure out what education means, then absolutely. And it's like, what does work mean?
That was my next segue. This is something that would benefit a group of employees in a corporation, in a company. This would be like staff development, because when you're talking about interpreting memos and problem solving and all this, it's all a matter of how you're interpreting. And a memo coming down from the general manager, for example, unless that general manager knows how the memo is being interpreted by his employees,
Could be offensive,
it could be. And
often it is.
Well, yeah, because of the different backgrounds.
Well,
that
people take
have.
things personally as well, right? You could get a memo
Yeah.
and think that the memo was written specifically for you,
Yeah.
right? So people are now walking on eggshells. It shapes, it definitely shapes who they are. If we're talking about like organizations, we'll go to the PGA, which your brother was a member, it still is, he's a
Yeah.
master professional, one of very few in Canada. And I was a PGA professional for 12 years. And the organizational structure of the PGA is such that it basically, it doesn't allow for the members to have much say. So when the members are trying to shape their own organization, which the membership is much bigger than the few that work in Acton,
Right.
there's a disconnect there. It's very tough for them philosophically to understand why the PGA is doing, and the PGA is progressing. It's doing some good stuff, but it's very hard for the membership, just like a student, to understand, what are you doing? There's no discussion, no dialogue going on. We're at least it seems to me the PGA is trying to create a stronger membership where they feel more secure and there's not mass exodus every time they make a new policy,
Yeah.
right? Just like in schools when they change curriculum, there is a mass exodus of a certain group, there always has to be,
Yeah.
right? When it went from science to math, the mass exodus was philosophy
Yeah.
and arts.
And unfortunately, when you're looking at an exodus from a place where you're captured, like
Yeah,
in an employment situation where many people just can't get up and walk out
right,
and find another job. And in schools, you can't. That's when you get into disengagement, which is
Total
worse
disengagement.
than leaving. because when you're disengaged, you basically are becoming indifferent to anything that's happening around you.
Well, that's what the young girl was talking about today, is she's disengaged from the thinking process. She has figured out the way to memorize,
Yeah.
and she's figured it out well because she has straight A's. But as far as engagement goes, why would she engage? She doesn't get paid anymore, right? Just like a worker, wherever they are, if they're gonna get paid the same amount, they're not gonna work harder. But if they get the meaning
Yeah.
of why they're working, they could step it up a notch, right? And
Yeah.
especially people in my business with charities and, nonprofits in that sector, if the passion isn't there, and it's just basically, and you don't understand why the organization exists, you're just waiting to get your check.
Yeah.
And it essentially is another job. And I tell all my volunteers when they start working for me, or start doing work for the organization, I should say, that two things are gonna happen. Either you're gonna feel 10 times worse than you did before you started working with me because of engagement, or you're gonna dodge me when I start bugging you about not doing the work you promised to do.
Yeah.
So it's an ownership thing, Bob. I think, like when students step up to the plate and start realizing that it's not Mr. Kirwan that owns my education, I own my education,
Yeah.
things become a lot different, right? That
Yeah.
it's.
And it tends to happen around grade 11.
Yeah,
I've noticed that with the tutoring and stuff that we've done. It tends to happen around because at that point, students start to take ownership because they see that what they do is gonna have an effect 2 years from now, when they get into college or university. And up until that point, this sense of purpose, for many of them, it's, I'm going to school because.
and what do you think the reason is for most of them?
Well, I mean.
Why are they there?
I don't think that they see any personal advantage or personal benefit, even though they will all say that they know that it's not good not to get an education. But when you ask them why are you here? Why do you want an education? I've been in classes I went around for a year with Everest College. It was CDI at the time, talking about career planning. And I would sometimes start off my class and say, well, none of you are here for an education. So there's not one of you that want that.
That wants a piece of paper.
Well, and I said, you want the piece of paper, you're not here to get an education. You don't care about a love of math. You want that paper. Because that paper is needed to get you the interview, to get you into the job that you really are looking forward to getting into. That's why you're getting an education. Nobody wants the education, but you're getting it.
And what do you think that from your experience, I agree with you 100%. If you had the piece of paper that, on their table or on their desk at the start of the class and said, you could take this piece of paper and walk out now, you still gotta pay the tuition, or you can stay in the class and study, I'll give you the piece of paper at the end. I'm sure 95% would take the piece of paper and run for the hills.
Possibly. However, I've been through my master's degree was the first time that I really felt that I enjoyed my education. Because in many of the master's courses that I took, the professor would come in and the professor would say, you tell me what you want. You want an A or a B? And if you pick an A, then I'll expect A work. You will get an A. And if you pick a B, I'll expect B work. So whatever you feel you want to put into this, you tell me now. And that's the mark you're going to. And I'll tell you, when you put down an A, you took ownership for that A, I never worked so hard in my life. Because I knew it was a personal reflection on me. It wasn't someone judging me, it was me judging me.
Yeah.
And my son Warren.
Self-employed.
Yeah, son Warren went to Trent University for his teacher's college. He came here, all three of my kids came to the commerce program here.
Okay.
Absolutely never did any one of them think they were ever gonna get into teaching, because you don't take the commerce program if you think you're gonna have to compete with people who are getting 90s to get into the
Right.
teacher's college.
Right.
So when he
It's
did
not the
get in,
typical
he got,
path.
yeah, he got into Trent. And at Trent, this is what they did, they said, no, there's no test, there's no marks. It's pass or fail. Success or unsuccessful, and it's basically, you put into this what you wanna get out of it, and everybody knew.
It's the way the system was forever,
Oh,
for 2,000 years.
and you know, people learned, because they knew that what they were getting out of that year was gonna help them in the classroom. Not what they're getting out of that year was gonna get them the mark that the teacher decided to give them. But it was gonna help them become teachers. So all of a sudden now you took ownership, saying, what I'm doing is helping me. I'm not doing it because somebody's gonna evaluate me, I'm doing it for myself. And I thought, my goodness, why can't we do that with everything? But we live in this generation that says, somebody has to evaluate and tell you what they think your work is worth. And as soon as somebody starts saying your work is less than perfect, you have a natural defense.
Absolutely.
And after you've done this for 13 years in school. Plus,
Right.
everybody's telling you how imperfect you are.
Yeah,
For no
or
wonder.
how awesome you are when, so there was a girl,
Yeah,
another
how
girl in the
awesome you are
class.
when you're really not.
This girl in class today said, I know how to make everyone around me ignore me. Parents, teachers, and that's just to continue to do what she does and get straight A's,
Yeah.
play on the basketball team, play on the volleyball team, do all the extracurricular stuff, be the perfect student. And she said, only in this class am I allowed to talk about my feelings, what matters to me, what Friday nights are like for me.
Yeah.
I'm expected to stay in when all my friends are going out. If I go out, I have to feel guilt and shame, because that's not the image that I'm putting out there.
That's right.
But if I don't put this image out there, I'm scared that I won't get the scholarship. I'm scared that I'll stop getting recognized and getting awards and things like that. And then if you think about the progression from that to university to work, it doesn't change, right? So if we, if we pay people based on evaluations in the same way that we grade them, then the self-worth of people can't increase, right? If you make minimum wage, but you feel like you're a really hard worker and, you know, that you should be getting $20 an hour or something like that, then the philosophical question is, what is my worth, is based on that, not what you feel.
Yeah, and I mean, we tend to judge people based on what people are paying, and so we.
Well, that's what it is.
That's
and-
what in school.
Or the title.
Or the
That's
title.
another way we could do it. When you're a
Yeah.
PGA of Canada professional, like
Yeah.
I was, I worked at about, at about $5,000 to $10,000 less than the poverty line every year.
Oh, I saw where,
Right?
I mean,
Yeah.
the number of hours you put in.
Yeah, and it's Canada, so we don't have the longest golf seasons.
Yeah.
So come, October or something like that, my self-worth was off the map. I wasn't even a PGA of Canada professional anymore.
Yeah.
I was someone who was trying to find something to do in the winter.
Yeah.
Bartend or whatever, so then my worth shifts.
Yeah.
It's a confusing self. We could never do this, even this right here, Bob,
Yeah.
even talking about it right now, between you and I is something that's new for people, it's fresh.
Yeah.
People don't even know what philosophy is. When I say philosophy, it's a bad word for most people. What is that? That's weird. What do you guys do?
Mhm.
And when you say, we talk about issues.
Yeah, talk about life.
We talk about life. We talk about,
And really, the place where probably more philosophy is considered and dealt with is on the golf course,
oh,
in between holes.
it's absolutely. What do you do with your mad self? What do you do with your happy self
Yeah.
when you make a shot that you didn't make before?
Yeah.
Does that most of the time, what I find is that when I'm taking out new golfers, and especially youth, is that you can see a lot of their personality traits within the first hole, by the end of the first hole.
Yeah.
Some of them just wanna pick up their ball and hide underneath the turtle shell,
Yeah.
right? They don't wanna continue to try it, because we've been trained to do things we're good at, and to ignore the things we're not. Don't try and get better at them, don't ask questions why you're not good at them.
Yeah.
Instead, just ignore that and do what you're good at.
Yeah.
And sadly, that means that there's the golf, there's not a lot of new golfers, because everybody's terrible at the start.
Yeah.
Not many people pick up a golf club and are good at it straight away.
No.
So what are the odds of them coming back next week to golf if we're not in programs?
Yeah, and one of the big problems is you're comparing yourself to others, and I think when you get into education, that's where the problem is, and that if you're an A student, or a B student, or a C student, you've been labeled. And that's
Yep.
your identity. It's like, if I said, I'm gonna bring in a hockey player from the NHL, and he's making $500,000 a year, you're gonna look and say, oh, he can't be making much, except that he's making an awful lot more than the Prime Minister of Canada.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're talking about a $500,000 a year hockey player,
He's garbage.
he's garbage.
Yeah,
But $500,000 for the Prime Minister of Canada, nobody would agree to pay him that much.
right.
So
Yeah.
it's so relative when you're comparing.
Or someone who's running the highest charity in
Yeah.
Canada, right? That's helping hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of youth, and
Yeah,
no one wants to pay them.
yeah, we talk about a person being a mayor or a city councillor in Sudbury, and you're gonna pay him $30,000. I'm thinking, if you had a person on a board of directors of a $500 million a year company, you said you were paying them $30,000 to run the company.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it would be, there's no way in the world.
Yeah,
So now we get the kids, and they've got all these conflicting messages. And that's why I said, what you're discussing with this group of students is great. The people that are not getting the message at this point are the ones that are not in the room, and straight A students have probably more stress on them.
absolutely.
And I can tell you, I used to tell some people at what I call the worst students in the class, I used to say they're probably the most likely to succeed in life if they're one at the bottom end of the class. But they've just learned that it's easier to be successful to be at the bottom than it is to be successful to be at the top. So it takes an awful lot less work to be at the bottom. And if that's where people expect you to be, why try to change?
It takes a life-changing, for me, it really was studying philosophy to realize that I wasn't a bum, I wasn't stupid, all those things that I told myself. Because at the time when I was in grade 9, I failed every class, and I went to Llewellyn, I skipped, I failed, I went from an advanced student, from a French Catholic school in Lively, good student, what the system would call a good student, to an awful student, what the system would call an awful student. I was still learning, but I was learning something that wasn't in the classroom. I was learning social skills and a bunch of different things. So when they said to me, you're not advanced, you're general. And today you're not an academic, they don't say unacademic, you're not an academic,
Applied or.
you're applied.
Yeah.
So right away, they're making a decision
Yeah.
that you can't study in the ivory tower.
Yeah.
You can go to the college, you'd probably be good at a trade, Ryan.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I'm someone who just doesn't like doing labor, period. I'm just not that type of guy, it doesn't make me happy.
Yeah.
But I was almost forced into it. Had it not been for golf and people like Wayne and John Hasty saying, Ryan, why don't you come on board and let's make something happen, I would probably be doing a labor job, because I'm a big guy, and people think like, well, Ryan's a strong guy, let's give him a shovel and let's get going.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it,
Labeling exercise again, right?
Is it?
What does applied mean versus an academic? Well, I'll tell you what, it means a lot to the students. However, they've never had a discussion about what it means until they get into our class, and we allow that discussion to happen.
Yeah.
Because most of them, at a few of the schools, some of them are all applied. So, they say, we're not as smart. That's what it means. We're not as smart as that group. So if I go back to here's the ironic part of it all. If I go back to my my yearbook, and I look at all of the students that stayed in applied or stayed in advanced, and none of them have the same level of education that I do. Most don't. The most that I know what they do. It's Sudbury. We're still connected in ways, and the friends that I have that went into or got put